Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Sky. I am the founder and CEO of Create Your Own Reality Media, where I encourage, empower, and inspire others to live a life of their dreams through podcasting, branding, and photography as well. So a lot of what I do, of course, helps with self-growth, self-development, really encouraging you to be the best version of yourself, to of course start or continue living the life of your dreams. So today we're just going to go into a little bit of a real talk about starting a business. So I think a lot of times when it comes to starting a business, people always think about the legal things, which of course are absolutely important. Definitely do not skip any of those steps because you do not want to deal with any potential repercussions in the future. So definitely don't disregard any of that. But I think before you even dive into the legal aspects, there's a little bit of work that you have to do behind the scenes. And I think a lot of people disregard this. I mean, depending on what type of business it is you're trying to build. So, of course, if you're trying to build like a small business, maybe off of a passion of yours, maybe off of something like a hobby that you just have started, maybe just selling to friends and has grown from there, you know, you might not be looking to scale to a Fortune 500 level company, right? So I think that is definitely important to consider when starting your business as well. So success is going to look different for every single person. And I just started reading this new book yesterday, Badass Your Brand by Pia Sylvia. She also has a podcast, which is the No BS Agency podcast. So definitely check out her stuff because she is really cool and really informative, especially if you're in the world of branding as a service. Definitely go check her out because her content is very helpful. Definitely not sponsored or anything. I just love her content, so definitely just gonna shout her out. But yes, I started reading her book the other day, and one of the things that she kind of mentioned right early on in the introduction was you need to define your level of success. So, for some people, that level of success is going to be able to build up, again, something close to a Fortune 500 company that's bringing in, billions of dollars in revenue that they're maybe even potentially able to sell for billions of dollars as well down the road. Now, of course, that is not everybody's goal, that is not everybody's version of success, right? So you really have to sit down and identify what success is for you. And honestly, that might be hard to do at the jump. I know it was something that I had never really considered myself until recently, until, reading that in the book that I just started. Of course, I know I want to be successful in life, right? I mean, I'm sure most people do at the end of the day, regardless of what aspect of life that may be for them, career, business, personal, social, relationship wise, everybody wants that element of success in their life. But you really have to sit down and define what that success is for you in every aspect of your life. So I think that is definitely one of the crucial first steps that you need to consider before moving into anything else. So really figure out what success looks like for you within your business. That way you can have a better plan going into it to be able to reach the level of success that you're looking for. So with that as well, I think growth rate is also kind of goes hand in hand with that, is also very important to consider. So I have a really good friend who is trying to build a really huge company, which is definitely, not something I am necessarily interested in. Again, I have my own definition of success. I, of course, want to reach my version of success, and I know that I will. It's just going to take some time. Business is definitely a marathon and it's not a sprint. So he had mentioned to me that, they had just recently gained over a little over 600 subscribers to their email list, so around 700, closer to 700. And within the past couple days, I think maybe over the weekend, a little bit more, they actually just gained another 1,100 subscribers. So right now, their email list is sitting at 1,800 subscribers, which is mind-blowing because they have been working on this for like the past couple months, just recently started putting out content, things like that. A lot of it's just been, word of mouth, telling friends, until maybe the last month or so when they've started on this content journey. So that is just crazy to me. I mean, I just kind of put together my first little freebie the other day. I added the link in my podcast, in my Instagram post on Sunday, and yeah, I I was kind of just sitting there like hoping that I would, maybe get one to a handful of subscribers from that. And to hear that, my friend had gotten 1,100 subscribers for his company just within a few days was just mind-blowing to me. And, of course, like, again, that goes back to the first element of like, what is your idea of success? Again, like, he wants to build this really huge company, which is incredible, but that is definitely not for everybody, right? It's definitely not a goal of mine. I want to be able to, live in my creativity, in my freedom, have my artistic expression, have my creative expression, but be able to help others within that as well. And of course, that's, depending on how you do it, don't get me wrong. You can definitely scale that to a big company. You can definitely scale that to an agency. There are different ways and different avenues to do so, but I just don't feel like that is my path. I, really love being able to create connections with people, genuine, authentic relationships. And yeah, I feel like that is definitely better suited, one-on-one or working with another small business or company. I don't think in my current plan in this month of June of 2025, I don't necessarily see myself scaling this to an agency level business. But, anything can change in the future. So, quote that right now. I mean, again, that's not in my plan currently. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, as I mentioned before, like growing a business is definitely a marathon and not a sprint. And especially depending on how big the business is, I think that's another huge thing to consider. Like my friend has a pretty decent sized team, so it makes a lot of sense as to, how they can get so much done in such a small amount of time. Versus me myself, like I'm a solopreneur, I'm an entrepreneur, and that is, more of the route that I want to take. So naturally, I understand that it's going to take a little bit longer, which I'm totally fine with. I just want to be able to do things the way that feel good to me, the way that I can, again, express myself creatively, authentically to build this brand and business that I love. So, yeah, I mean, there's a variety of things to consider when it comes to success and growth as well. And the last thing I want to address is definitely just imposter syndrome, right? So, I think for myself, especially, I, formed my business back in 2023, January of 2023. So it's been around for a little bit more than 2 years. I started my podcast back in September of 2023. So almost hit the 2 year mark on that, which is amazing. It's funny. I started my podcast kind of as a way to challenge myself, honestly. I mean, I love listening to podcasts. At the time that I initially started my podcast, the job that I was working was very time intensive, right? And a lot of podcasts out there, when it comes to especially like interviewing other people, can run anywhere from like 30 minutes to an hour long. And I definitely did not have the time to be able to listen to a complete episode like that, you know, in that amount of time altogether. Yeah, so I'd have to either break it up, listen to it maybe over a whole week, and I don't know, like the same excitement that I had when I started listening to the episode would kind of die as it went on, right? Like I would definitely kind of like lose interest in it as the days went on, as I kind of maybe forgot what a couple key elements were, when it started versus, where I was at a couple days later on. So yeah, like I really just wanted to create a podcast that was really short, concise, consumable for people who didn't have too much time. And that's what I did. So the other thing too, like at the time, I was someone who kind of always hated hearing my own voice. Like I would say I definitely wasn't really comfortable, um, with my voice. It always sounded weird to me. I never really liked the way I sounded when I had to, hear myself back on video or whatever it was. But again, I had this idea that I just wanted to create and I just went for it. So, my podcast has definitely been something that I have loved the process of and continue to love the process of as it evolves, which has just been so much fun. So, I think, again, like when it comes to imposter syndrome, that was one of the things that kind of held me back for a while. Especially even still when it comes to podcasts, like there are definitely podcasts with, of course, much more established and much more well-known, business owners and um, experts in their fields, entrepreneurs, things like that, who, of course, people are going to probably find a lot easier, find a little bit quicker, and, might trust more initially right off the bat, which, of course, is understandable, right? If they've been in the industry for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, it's naturally going to make a lot more sense for somebody to initially go ahead and choose their podcast, right? Um, but of course, again, I think the through line in all of this, right, is that business is a marathon and not a sprint. So you can't expect yourself to have that same amount of knowledge as somebody who's been in the business or in a business in a field for 20 plus years, right? You have to give yourself the grace and you have to give yourself the time to expand your knowledge and your expertise to get yourself to that point as well. A big reason why I struggled to kind of really get my business up and running, I think I would just always use the excuse of, I didn't have the time, right? Because as I mentioned, I was working a really, really time intensive job, which, was not a lie. It definitely took up a whole bunch of my time. Only had one day off throughout the week, so that was, kind of my only day to really get things done. But in the long run, it really just was me using my time really poorly. And I think that's something I'm still trying to improve on in terms of time management. Of course, I think that's something we can always improve on. I'm definitely, very big on the whole self-growth aspect, as I mentioned earlier. You know, as humans, as people, we're always going to be growing, we're always going to be evolving. There's always new knowledge that we're going to be gaining. Even as an expert in your potential field, in your potential niche, there's always going to be new things you can learn, especially as time, especially as technology and the world continues to evolve as well. Right? So give yourself that grace, especially when you're starting out in your business. Imposter syndrome is something that is real for beginners, but also for established business owners as well. I mean, there are a bunch of people I follow on YouTube, especially who have been running their own businesses for around 5 to 8 to 10, 15 years, right? And they've gotten to this amazing point in their business where they're starting to see that success, they're starting to be a little bit more stable, and that is incredible, right? That's, of course, something as small business owners, especially, we definitely strive for. And they, you know, they still mention that they have imposter syndrome every once in a while. So I think, again, you really just have to give yourself the grace in the beginning that, of course, you are not going to have the same level of experience, the same level of knowledge as somebody who's been in the business for 20 years. But if you don't give yourself that chance to start, you're never going to be able to gain that experience to get yourself to that point. So you just kind of have to start, right? I think there's a study that's been shown, and I heard it again earlier in another podcast that I was listening to, that there's really an experiment with a group of people, or two groups of people rather. One group they told to make one pot, right? And then the second group, they told them make as many pots as you can within a certain time frame, of course. Now it turns out the group that made more pots naturally made better ones by the end, versus the group that only had the task of making one single pot. You gain experience by doing, right? And I am definitely a person who loves to learn, always love expanding my knowledge, whether it's through reading, courses, classes, YouTube videos, things like that. But I definitely fell under that wave of consumption rather than creating. So I was really blessed a few weeks ago to be able to be given more time to put into my business. And while it has definitely been new and scary, it has also just been equally as exciting and amazing. So yeah, I mean, my biggest piece of advice would be just start. No matter where you're at, just put something out there, whether it be post on Instagram, a post on YouTube, TikTok, whatever platform it is that you choose to use, just get something out there, and I think the cool thing is as well, there are so many different things and different possibilities out there for people to start a business in. Now, the other thing that I do want to touch on, just popped into my head again right now, is really being clear on your target audience. Now, this was something that I definitely did not start correctly from the jump. I am now just kind of starting to get that clarity there, and I still feel like I have a little bit of ways to go on that just to really get it solid, to be able to make sure I'm talking to the right people, make sure my messaging is correct, to actually find those clients and people that I would love to work with. Right? So when you're starting your business, sometimes people have a super specific idea within a super specific niche, right? Other times people have a potential service or a potential idea that is pretty broad that they would like to do, right? But they don't necessarily have that specific niche in their head at first. So I do think, especially when you're starting out, I think it is a little bit important to have a specific niche, right? Because the main thing when it comes to finding clients or customers is they really have to know, like, and trust you. Now, if you are someone who is offering all these different services, it's a little unclear what you do, kind of you're not really even sure of it at first, like, the customer is definitely not going to be able to trust you either. And I think that is where I definitely made my And I think that is where I definitely made my biggest mistake as well. I was just very unclear on what exactly I was offering, who my target audience was. So it just became really difficult to offer my services correctly. So if you're in a really specific niche, it's definitely going to be a lot easier for you to get started. Right, because a lot of the times, very specific niches kind of have a very specific target audience as well. And especially if that's something, you're interested in, of course, you might know people that are in that niche. You might know maybe other creatives or other business owners that potentially might be in that niche as well, that you can either learn from directly or help guide you down that journey. When it comes to things that are a little bit more broad, it might be a little bit more difficult to get started initially just because there are so many people, of course, trying to do that same thing. So you really need to find that unique value proposition for yourself. You really need to figure out what it is that sets you apart from your competition. So like I mentioned earlier, it's really just about clarity, right? So you need to be clear on not only what it is that you're offering, the niche, your target audience, but also what makes you stand out. Because if you don't have something that initially makes you stand out from the competition, what is it that is going to sell a client on you versus somebody, again, that may have been in the business for 5, 8, 10, 15 years, right? So just really making yourself stand out in your niche, in your service industry, in your whatever it is that you are potentially trying to start up is really, really important. Yeah, those are definitely the main tips that I have that I wish I can kind of, if I had to start over in starting a business, which I guess I'm kind of doing right now, like those are definitely the big things that I would consider right off the bat. Because those are a lot of the things that I'm working on currently. So I just wanted to share those with you guys in case anybody is in that same position, kind of struggling that same way. I think those things are really crucial, really important to know as well. So thank you guys so much for sticking around and listening to this video. If you do like this content, please be sure to give this video a like, subscribe down below, and leave a comment if you want to chat, if you had any thoughts, any ideas as well. That way, we can start an engaging community over here as well. Now, as I mentioned, I did just kind of make my first freebie. It is a brand questionnaire, so it goes over a couple essential things that you definitely need in your brand to get started as well. Now, I will leave that linked down in the description below, as well as the podcast episode where I detail a couple of those a bit more than, of course, just a simple brand questionnaire. So thank you guys again so much for listening, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.